Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Just Parlays with Chris King. In case you don't know, I'm Chris King. I'm the host of the show. Still currently the only person on the show. As you see, I don't have my previous co-hosts, Scott Steen or Scott Reichel or Jim Williams. They're all off on assignment somewhere, or at least that's what we're going to go with. I apologize for not being here yesterday. As I said on Monday, sometimes real life gets in the way, and I had to take my wife for a medical procedure. We got that squared away. So we're back here today. We'll talk about the Monday night game a little bit, even though that's probably been beaten to death. We saw the Cowboys end up beating the Giants 23-16. Hopefully, we don't get any more Monday night games like that. It was 6-3 at the half. Not a very entertaining contest. If you're Dallas, though, you have to wonder, is Tony Pollard now going to start ceding more or taking more snaps away from Ezekiel Elliott? He was very effective in his time on the ground, and it made for a good two-headed rushing attack against the Giants defense that had issues stopping the run. The one downer from that parlay that we had on Monday was all the football ones cashed in. Sterling Shepard went over 4.5 receptions. Elliott scored a touchdown. Saquon Barkley had over 22.5 receiving yards. But the problem was in that 4-teamer that we had was that Aaron Judge, had to stick a baseball one there, and that didn't actually pan out. So because, Toronto has gone to treating Judge like we see Barry Bonds treated with just issuing free passes left and right. He walked, I think, 3 times Monday night. He walked 4 times last night. Most frustrating thing when you're dealing with sports in general, or in this case, in a total base prop, is not even getting the chance to swing the bat because they pitch around you. And that's something that Judge is probably going to continue to see. It wouldn't surprise me if he walks multiple times again tonight. Of course, in this case, it could just be because Mitch White is not exactly the most accurate pitcher in the majors. I agree, Andrew. It was lame by Toronto. They walked in the 10th inning on Monday night before getting Rizzo to bounce out to end the inning. But 4 times yesterday, I think, is a little excessive. I get you don't want to be the team that gives up 61, but still, I ran across an interesting stat. I think it was last night that you look at Aaron Judge and he's fanned 167 is it? 167 times this year in 548 at bats. So, you've got basically about a 30% chance of striking him out. On the flip side, if you look at Tony Gwynn, everybody remembers the late Tony Gwynn, during his time in San Diego. If you look at his numbers just through the entire decade of the 90s. So in 5,453 plate appearances, Tony Gwynn struck out 188 times. So now you look at these guys now where it's all about launch angle and it's all about the 3 true outcomes. Either, you walk, you strike out, or you homer. And you see these guys that will strike out more times in a season than Tony Gwynn struck out over a decade. Just think about that. And it's not like Gwynn was a scrub. He hit 344 over the course of the 90s, and over 1,700 hits in that stretch. And these things have been they've been overlooked because everybody wants to chase the home run. I know, like they said in Bull Durham and stuff, chicks dig the long ball. The fundamentals of the sport have kind of gone by the wayside, and we've seen it all too often. But yeah, the Judge thing is what bothered me in this series. It bothered me Monday night more since we had it in there, and everything else in that section had panned out with Elliott and Barkley and Bryce Elder striking out more than 4.5 hitters. But unfortunately, that's the way the world works. Today I threw in some alternative strikeout numbers too, just as a heads up. And with the 5 that I came up with for alternative numbers, if you were just to play those 5, the numbers it makes for a pretty nice return if those guys pan out. Hopefully we don't have issues like when Reichel was here and we watched George Kirby get shelled in his outing last week against Oakland when we talked about these. What else did we see yesterday? I don't know if anybody watched the Marlins game, because why would you? Unless Alcantara's pitching. But Richard Blyer, a guy who had committed no balks in his first 303 major league appearances, committed 3 in the same at bat against Pete Alonso yesterday. Chased Jeff McNeil around after he had an infield hit, came around to score without having to steal a base or advance on a wild pitch or anything else. 3 straight balks. After the inning, Blyer was ejected. The Marlins still won that game 6-4. Of course, Atlanta rolled over Washington. So we're right back where we started at the beginning of the season. Both those teams tied for first in the NL East. Big series coming up this weekend in Atlanta. They're still trying to figure out what they're going to do for that series with the impending landfall of Hurricane Ian. Whether it shows up, they're going to, move the series, and have a split doubleheader on Sunday. They've talked about that. They won't start the series tomorrow. They've already made that clear. And they're not talking about moving it anywhere. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, how things work as far as where they're going to have the game, what's going to go on. It's going to be a giant mess, I'm sure. And it's too bad because, these are 2 teams that are battling for that second seed in the National League playoffs. Personally, I don't like either one of them. Can't stand the Mets. Definitely can't stand Atlanta. But, it'd be a shame to have the division race impacted by the weather because, you have to shuffle around rotations and everything else. But we'll see what comes out of that. Be interested to see what you guys think about the big news that Zach Wilson's probably going to start on Sunday for the New York Jets. I'm sure Reichel is happy. I saw him tweeting about how if the interception prop for Zach Wilson is anywhere below minus 170, he'll be jumping on that like a fat kid on cake. You can't blame him. Let's face it, Wilson was not exactly great last season at hanging on to the ball. And Pittsburgh does have a pretty aggressive secondary. Myles Garrett not yet ruled out for Sunday's game after the one-car accident he had earlier this week. Could be interesting to see how that plays out. Be interesting to see if the league will hand out any discipline well after the fact, which is all too common in the National Football League. The Browns are supposed to play the Falcons. I don't know if they necessarily need him. He apparently has sprained his shoulder and strained his bicep after his car went off the road. So it'll be an interesting thing there for sure. Just looking ahead, of course, tomorrow we've got the Bengals and the Dolphins. Should be an interesting game. Cincinnati, obviously, got back on track last week by picking up a win over the Jets. Miami's got their own walking wounded. It'll be interesting to see if Mike McDaniel gets Tua Tagovailoa in there or, whether they end up having to turn to Teddy Bridgewater because I know he didn't practice Monday. I didn't get a chance to see if he practiced yesterday. Yeah, Andrew, I think Zach Wilson's best opportunity for success will be throwing it to Garrett Wilson. Elijah Moore is good. I just, I think the Jets have whiffed on some picks. That they went out and drafted Denzel Mims, and he thought he was going to be a bigger factor in that offense, and they decided not to use him as much, and to the point where he wanted to be cut or traded or whatever else. I'd like to see if Breece Hall finally got more snaps than Michael Carter last week. I want to see if that trend continues. Hall's been pretty good in his first 3 games, 21 carries, 112 yards. So he averages 5.3 a carry, and he's caught 13 passes for another 100 yards and a touchdown. It's good to have a 1A and 1B type system there, which is basically what they have, because if you look at the splits, Carter has 28 carries, Hall has 21. They both caught 13 passes, though Hall has been targeted 21 times to Carter's 16. But still, having 2 guys that can move the chains and have the versatility to be a good pass catcher out of the backfield is something the Jets haven't had since Curtis Martin was there. And I don't know if you consider Bilal Powell a decent third down back. Good to see it, Dead Bodies. Hope things are good with you. Things are good here, except for the fact that at the moment we don't have a co-host because of decisions made above our pay grade. But hopefully things are well with you. Good to have you back. Hope things are proceeding well for everybody. Anybody have anything they want to talk about from what happened yesterday or looking ahead? Feel free to chime in. I'll give you a minute to do that while we talk about the exciting housekeeping stuff that comes with talking about every show. Of course, we'll talk about our sponsor, Caesars. Caesars Sportsbook has a great deal for first-time users. You can get up to $1,250 in free bet insurance. So if your first bet goes wrong, Caesars will make it right and give you a second opportunity to win a first bet. So who says you never get a second chance to make a first impression? Apparently, Caesars defies that. Make sure you always to check the age limits in your state, and we always say bet responsibly. By the same token, if being on this show and seeing the 4,653 games that we talk about every day isn't enough for you, you can get my best premium bets every day. The link is in the show box below. You can always check out the Winners and Whiners website, as well as Picks and Parlays, and the YouTube channels for free picks all day. On the premium side, we were 2-1 yesterday. Cleveland was a disappointment, losing 6-5 and 11 to Tampa Bay. I think the rain kind of derailed Bieber a little bit because he came back, he got out of the third, but then gave up 4 in the fourth. Cleveland clawed back to tie the game, but missed opportunities to win it in the 9th and the 10th and the 11th, and that wasn't going to get it done. And make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe and hit the bell so you'll never miss the show. We, as Scott Steen would say, we're not above begging for likes. It helps people know that you guys actually watch the show and we're not just sitting here talking to dead air. Now, let's see. Got some good pitcher props. Yeah, got some good strikeout props. Yep. Reichel hit his Cardinals bet. So I'm sure he's happy. I know originally it was a 2-team parlay where he had bet on a WNBA game. I think it was the Dallas Wings that night when he made the bet about the Cardinals. But yeah, they clinched the division. Personally, it couldn't happen to a better bunch of degenerates. No, I respect the Cardinals organization for what they've done. They've gotten by with a lot of veterans that are probably near the end of their rope. Milwaukee, let's face it, Milwaukee gave it to them. They traded away Hader. Not like that has turned out to be a bad deal when you look at it in retrospect, but they had a lot of injuries to their staff, and they couldn't hit for long stretches of the season. But yeah, I know Reichel very happy that he cashed on that. It'll probably help make up for getting murdered over the weekend in football, because I know he had a rough weekend. I don't remember if this is the past weekend or the weekend before, but good for Reichel. I know that he was pretty happy to see the Cardinals pull away down the stretch and win the division. And I agree. I think Breece Hall will take over eventually for the Jets. it'll be. I mean, if you have Carter as a third down back, it'll be. You can't complain too much about that. And let's not forget, also, guys, that the NFL returns to London this week. I'm sure everybody really excited to get up at 6:30 on the West Coast, 9:30 here on the East Coast to watch the Vikings play the Saints. Dalvin Cook considered day-to-day with that shoulder injury. The Saints, a train wreck. Jameis Winston plans to play. I have to wonder at what point does Winston realize that, with all these back issues that he has, that it might be better off taking some time to get it right, kind of like Stafford did a few years ago when he was in Detroit. I understand that, nobody wants to give up their starting job and things like that, but let's face it, you're not helping the team at this point. And I get that your backup is Andy Dalton, but at some point you've got to make the sacrifice to, do what's best for the team. Let's see what else we have coming up. What do we have for college football? I think there's only one game tomorrow. Is that correct? Let's see. I'm pretty sure it's our good buddies. Oh, no, I forgot they moved the South Carolina game to tomorrow. That'll be over in Columbia a couple hours from here. I'm guessing that's because South Carolina State, I believe, is out in Orangeburg, which is near the coast. So with Hurricane Ian, and the rains, I guess they decided they would move that ahead. The other game is probably not going to be one that anyone's going to be overly excited about, given how poorly Utah State has played. They get to travel within the state, at least, as they go to face BYU. BYU bounced back nicely from that loss to Oregon as they knocked off Wyoming by 2 scores at home last week. But I mean, what happened to Utah State? We talked about when we did the previews of the Mountain West, how good they were last year. Now you're looking, Logan Bonner is 62 of 110 passing for 753 yards. He's thrown 6 touchdowns. He's been intercepted 8 times. Cooper Legas is 7 of 17 for 40 yards and an interception. Levi Williams is 2 of 6 for 15 yards. Calvin Tyler had that good run game against Connecticut, and now you look, and he's averaging 3.7 yards a carry. Robert Briggs has been better. He's averaged 5.8 yards on 29 attempts and has their only rushing touchdown. And I know we talked about they had to replace all these receivers, but I mean, come on, you went from a team that was averaging let me pull it up here because God knows I have enough tabs open. But, Utah State was a big offensive team last season. They finished 11-3. They finished 33rd in the country, averaged 33.6 points a game. And now you're looking, and Blake Anderson's team is 123rd in the country out of 131 teams in scoring offense. They've only put up 15.5 points a game. They're 117th in scoring defense. They're giving up 36 a contest. I know everybody's going to be like, well, yeah, one of those games was against Alabama. And I get that. That was 55-0. But you got beat 35-7 by Weber State. And you turned the ball over 4 times. That's the thing. They turned the ball over 0 times against Alabama. Then they turned it over 4 against Weber State. They turned it over 6 times against UNLV. Now, the last time UNLV was relevant in college football was, let's see, never. The last time they made a bowl game was 2013 when they were 7-6 under Bobby Hawk. That's their only bowl game since 2001. You have to look back before that. They went to the Las Vegas Bowl under John Robinson in 2000 when they were 8-5. They went to the Las Vegas Bowl and won in 1994 under Jeff Horton when they were 7-5. And then you have to go back to the Harvey Hyde era when they went 11-2 in 84 and went to the California Bowl. But the Harvey Hyde era was one that didn't end well because you look and the league, or not the league, but the NCAA investigated because that was back during the Randall Cunningham era with the conference, but they used ineligible players in the Big West, so they had to forfeit all their wins from 83 and 84. So UNLV has not really been relevant in the world of college football. Why is Miami getting 3.5 points? Well, I think part of it's injuries. I mean, you look at – I'm just going to pull up the injury report real quick. I mean, say what you want. I don't think that Tagovailoa was just dealing with a back injury. As much as they want to try to say he hyperextended his back, yeah, I'm gonna smash my head through a wall and say I hyperextended my back too. And you have to factor in the games in Cincinnati. The Dolphins are coming off a short week. Just taking a look here at the injury report. Robert Hunt, Tagovailoa, Zach Sealer, Xavier Howard, Brandon Jones, Raekwon Davis, Cedric Wilson, and Waddle were all limited in practice yesterday. Teron Armstead didn't practice. I mean, you're talking about a lot of guys there. You're talking about at least 2 starting linemen. Greg Little practiced, but, I mean, he didn't look good against Buffalo. Kept wandering off the field. And you have to wonder, the Dolphins, they won the game, and I get that, but they gave up almost 500 yards. They still don't have Byron Jones on the other corner spot. Howard didn't look great when it came to stopping anyone. And unless the Dolphins go blitz happy like they did against Josh Allen, you have to think the Bengals have a lot of weapons with Chase and Higgins and Tyler Boyd and Mixon, as long as he plays, which I'm guessing he will since he was a full participant in practice. And so was Hayden Hurst. So I think, Miami's got to prove they can win on the road on a short week. I'm thinking that's why Cincinnati's got the point advantage. You have to remember, home field advantage is usually worth between 2.5 and 3.5 points, depending on the book. So you have to think that it would be more of a even number if they were in Miami. And I think they're basing it on Cincinnati is due to turn things around. Like I said, they won last week. They've got all their offensive weapons. Now, if their line can block, that's going to be a big question because God knows we've seen the issues that Cincinnati's had protecting Joe Burrow going back to last season and even early this season. Am I liking the Brewers and Woodruff? Well, like Andrew said, the Cardinals clinched. They know they're not going to get one of the top 2 seeds in the playoffs. And so you could see a little bit of a letdown. You might see Oliver Marmol may give a couple of his normal guys a day off. Woodruff has been arguably the best pitcher that Milwaukee's had all season because, Corbin Burns has struggled. Freddie Peralta has been hurt. Lauer has been hurt. So Hauser has been bad most of the year. So you're looking in Woodruff has pitched well. I'm not sold on Jose Quintana. I mean, I know he pitched for Chicago for a while, and he pitched for the White Sox, and then he went to the Angels and was terrible. And he was good with Pittsburgh, which is why he got traded in the first place. I think Quintana can keep them in it, but I think Woodruff is the better pitcher. And I think that the Brewers should win this one. They need the wins because, they're still on the outside looking in at a wild card spot. So they need to win and they need help. And now that the Cardinals are pretty much locked into where they are in the playoff field, the pressure's off them, you know what I mean? So I would lean towards Milwaukee. I think I've got them in one of the parlays I have in there. Out of the 2 for Buddy asking about Jake Odorizzi over 3.5 strikeouts or over 15.5 outs, I'm with Bill. I don't like Jake Odorizzi. I like to call him over easy because he gets lit up on a regular basis. But you look here, he struck out at least 4 in 4 of his last 5 starts. He had 6 against the Phillies in his last outing. I think you're probably safer on that front. I know Washington doesn't have a great lineup by any stretch of the imagination. But, I mean, I said the same thing when Odorizzi pitched against Pittsburgh a few starts ago, and he was actually good then. But against Seattle, he struggled. He was good against the Phillies last week at home, but when he went on the road, he was god-awful. You have 8 runs on 10 hits in 4 innings. And you look at Odorizzi's numbers since he came to Atlanta, 8 starts, a 1-3 record, a 597 earned run average. He's given up 8 homers and 37 2/3. Now, I get that Washington isn't a great team by any stretch of the imagination, but Odorizzi's not a great pitcher either. And you look at his last 10 outings, he's gone over that 15.5 out mark 3 times. And his last 3 starts, he's gone 3 2/3, 4 2/3, and 4 flat. For the season, he's averaging less than 5 innings a start. I would probably, if I was going to go one way or the other, I'd go with the strikeout prop. Steph says Braves on the run line, the Orioles and the A's and the Angels over 8.5. I like the Orioles. I expect that game to have another truckload of runs. I mean, we've seen 22 runs in each of the first 2 games of this series. Should be another high-scoring affair. Rich Hill against Dean Kramer. Kramer's been good, but he's getting by with a lot of junk. And he struggled against Boston in his career. He's 0-3 with an ERA over 7. The A's, Adrian Martinez is going. His ERA is what? I think 6 and change in the majors. It was over 5 and I think 5.79 in the minors. Lorenzen's been decent, but the Angels can put up some runs, especially at home. And they've got a better lineup with Trout and Ohtani than those guys, but they should get to, I would imagine, 9 or 10. The Braves, I'm just worried about because I don't trust Odorizzi, and I like Josiah Gray. If you wanted to throw a lawn dart, which I have in the shot in the dark section, I would actually take the Nationals just because it's a ridiculous price. It's plus 180, I think, on the money line, and on the run line for Washington, it's like plus 340. Yeah, I can't back Odorizzi. I don't think there's many people that will willingly jump on that bandwagon, but it should be interesting. So without further ado, we can move on to today's picks, starting with the 2 for the money segment. Going to go with the Phillies over the Cubs. I know that Hayden Wesneski has pitched well for Chicago since coming up from the minors after he came over in the trade that sent Scott F. Frost to the Yankees. The difference is the Phillies have something to play for, which is important. And as bad as Aaron Nola can be this time of year, the Cubs lineup not overly deep. They did get Wilson Contreras back in the last couple of days. They did beat the Phillies yesterday 2-1 in a low-scoring affair. I just don't see them doing a ton of damage against Nola. And let's face it, it's a game the Phillies have to win if they want to stay in the playoff picture. AJ's, I saw Dane Jackson is back at practice. Hopefully he'll be back. I don't know if he'll be back this week, but hopefully next week at the latest. I know they signed Xavier Rhodes to the practice squad. At least they brought in a veteran corner to help out in the short term, especially with Benford breaking his hand and Trey White can't play this week. Hopefully he'll be back in the next couple of weeks too. I don't know if they'll hold him out till after the bye in late October or not. But, you think about that, and Buffalo, once they get healthy, they'll have a lot of corners to work with. That is good. It's good for these young guys to get some reps now. as you go forward in the season, because that way you've got guys that are tested as you get closer to the playoffs should another injury come up. The Mariners over the Rangers, disappointed with the way Seattle played last night. Did nothing offensively. And, the Mariners, you have to wonder, are they to the point where they're starting to worry because of the fact that, they haven't been to the playoffs since 2001? Are they worried they're going to melt down? You look, they've still got a 3.5 game lead over the Orioles. Seattle has 9 games left. Baltimore has 8. So, had Baltimore been able to win yesterday, that would have put some more pressure on Seattle. But here it's George Kirby against Martin Perez. Perez has pitched well. He's made himself some money for next season because I think he signed a 1-year deal with Texas prior to last season. But, Kirby's been great since the beginning of August. You look at his numbers, and he's just been rolling right along. I know we talked about it last week promptly, and then he promptly went out and got shelled by Oakland and lasted like 3 1/3 innings. But you look since August, I think it's August 1st, and I will just pull this up real quick because, that's what we do here is just randomly pull stuff up on the fly. But, yeah, since August 6th, because that was his first start in the month of August. So we're talking about a span of 9 starts. Kirby has gone 46 2/3 innings, walked 7, struck out 51. He's 5-1 with a 289 earned run average, and his FIP in that stretch is just 1.51. So he's been unlucky, mainly because of the fact that opposing hitters have a 362 average on balls in play. But 70% of his pitches in that stretch are strikes. That is a ridiculously high number we saw start. I'm trying to remember who he started against. It might have been the Atlanta start, where his first 18 or 19 pitches were strikes. And you look and, Texas is going nowhere. At least they've got some building blocks for the future, but they're not going anywhere this year. Seattle needs the win, and that's what it boils down to. Now, I see James there asking about Kansas on the money line, Duke on the money line, and Kentucky with the points. Let me take a look here. Oops, wrong button. All right, Duke is playing Virginia. Well, at least they're at home. I don't trust Virginia. We've talked about them a couple times before. They got trounced by Illinois. They squeaked past Old Dominion. They looked terrible in the first half against Syracuse, came back to take the lead in that game, and then ended up losing on a field goal with a minute to go. Duke, Duke played pretty well against Kansas last week. Kansas, another surprising team. I would back Duke. I don't trust, Armstrong has been mediocre this season, barely completing 50% of his throws, more interceptions than touchdowns. Duke should win. They should probably cover too. I see the spread is only like 3. Kansas, talked about them a bit on Monday. They get Iowa State. Iowa State didn't overly impress me against Baylor. They gave up 31 points to a Baylor team that has struggled to move the ball at times this year. Jalen Daniels, watch out. That guy is a very good dual-threat quarterback. If Kansas can shut down Xavier Hutchinson and make Hunter Deckers throw the ball somewhere else, it's going to be a long day for the Cyclones. I mean, you look at who Iowa State's played. They have 2 blowout wins. They blew out Southeastern Missouri, whoop-de-doo, and they blew out Ohio, who had to struggle to get past Fordham last weekend in that wild game where both quarterbacks threw for 872,000 yards. And it was, 53-52 before Fordham threw the ball around and it got recovered for a touchdown as time expired. But in their 2 games against Power 5 conferences, Iowa State edged Iowa 10-7. on the road, and then they lost to Baylor last week. Meanwhile, you're talking about a Kansas team, they beat West Virginia in Morgantown. They beat Houston in Houston, and they beat Duke at home. I'm surprised that they're an underdog, in all honesty. You look, and I get that Iowa State is 3-1, but like we said, 2 of their wins are over doormats. Kansas has beaten a couple of very good. Well, if not very good. I mean, Houston was right up there with Cincinnati in the AAC last year. West Virginia, a Big 12 team, and that's probably going to be a middle of the road team this year, but we saw West Virginia steamroll Virginia Tech. And Duke has played surprisingly decent football so far. So I'm surprised the game is not even or Kansas by a point or two. I think Kansas should take care of Iowa State. And the other one, Kentucky. Yeah, the North Carolina, the weather's probably going to be bad. You're probably going to see a lot of rain. It'll probably be like a few years ago where, I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Necessary Roughness that came out in 91 with Scott Bakula and Rob Schneider and Larry Miller and all those guys, where they talk about the guy gets tackled at the 27, though he hydroplanes to the 14 or something like that. That's probably the way the weather's going to be. Kentucky's a good football team. I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from what Stoops has done there. I get Ole Miss is a top 15 team in the country. But, I mean, they struggled last week to beat Tulsa. I mean, you look, their one good game was against Georgia Tech, and everybody knows how bad Georgia Tech is. They kind of scuffled to beat Troy in the opener. They blew out Central Arkansas, which isn't saying anything. And they struggled last week against Tulsa. They won by 8 in the game. I think they were favored by, 3 touchdowns? Something like that. Yeah, 21 points they were favored. And I get that they were up. I get they were up 35-14 late in the third, or late in the first half, and then didn't score the rest of the way. But, I mean, you can't let a team like Tulsa hang around. You look at some of those drives Tulsa had. Tulsa had an 87-yard drive that ended in a touchdown. They had a 97-yard drive late in the third, early in the fourth quarter that ended in a touchdown. Ole Miss outgained Tulsa by 5 yards. And I know people are going to say, well, some of that was garbage time. Well, it's not garbage time when they make it a one-score game with more than 14 minutes to play. Meanwhile, Kentucky's going to have Christopher Rodriguez back for the first time all season. I know they had their issues against Northern Illinois, probably because they were playing with their food. I mean, let's be honest. Will Levis is probably one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. There's talk he could be the number 1 pick in the draft. I get the games in Oxford. I get that Ole Miss is supposed to be tough at home. But this Kentucky team is not intimidated by anybody. And getting Rodriguez back to pair with Smoke is going to be a big plus. You got to take the points in that one. What do I think of the Braves over 7.5? Houston on the money line, the Yankees on the money line, and over 7, and Boston over 8. Did they lower the total on the Boston game to 8? Because I thought last night it was 9. If that's an alternative, then 8 is definitely a good thing. I mean, like I said, we saw 22 runs in each of the first 2 games of the series. The average game between the Orioles and the Red Sox averages better than 11.5 runs a game this season. I like that. The Braves, like I said, I don't know if I trust Odorizzi, but I think that game can get over 7.5. I think that Washington could probably get Odorizzi for at least 2 or 3. The Yankees on the money line. I mean, they clinched the division yesterday, but I can't trust Mitch White, which is who's going for Toronto. I see that Bill doesn't like Cole. I mean, Cole's been up and down. I get it. But, I mean, when you're comparing Garrett Cole to Mitch White, if you said you've got to pick one of these two guys to win the game, I'd like to think that most people would say, well, give me the guy that's actually been to the playoffs and, been a contributor and has a couple wins to his credit. Cole's been mediocre in September. He's given up 4 runs in each of his last 3 starts. Over his 4 starts in the month, he's got a 494 earned run average. But he struck out 40 in 23 and 2/3 innings. And probably more importantly, even though Cole has struggled, the Yankees are 4-0 on those 4 starts. So that's something to look to as well. Oh, that's your tease. No need to apologize, dead boys. I get it. Or dead bodies. I was going to say, because I saw it at 9, and I still liked it at 9 in the case of the Orioles and the Red Sox. But, yeah, I like the Yankees in that game. And I like that Astros-Diamondbacks game. I don't know if you're going to see a ton of offense. You got Verlander facing an Arizona team that I think 8 of their 9 starters fan almost 20% of the time, at least, against right-handed pitching. And Zach Gallen is going for the Diamondbacks, and we know how well he's been going. Had that stretch of over 40, what did it get to, 44, I think, consecutive scoreless innings that ended earlier this month. And you look, Gallen, 12-3 at 246 earned run average and a .89 whip. He's fanned 180 and 172 innings. I mean, you talk about front runners for the NL Cy Young, and I know people were talking about Kyle Wright because he's got 20 wins. People were talking about, Tony Gonsolin before because he was 16-1 before he ended up on the shelf. But, I mean, you look at these guys and, you talk about Gallen and you talk about Alcantara, and you're talking about 2 guys that are on teams with losing records. Imagine what these guys could do if they were on a team that could actually score runs on a regular basis. And Gallen's 12-3 pitching for Arizona. Alcantara's, what's he got now? Is he up to 13 wins? 14 wins, 14-8. And he leads the league in innings pitched, and he's got 5 complete games. But you look at his numbers this year and just think, because you look at what he's done, and he's got, 1, 2, 3. Let's see here. 3 starts where he went at least 8 innings or 7 innings and gave up no runs and ended up with a no decision. He's got multiple other starts where he went, I think he gave up 2 runs or less and didn't get a decision. Imagine if he was on a team like the Dodgers. How many wins would we be talking about Alcantara having instead of being 14-8? Because you're talking about a guy that, there's a start against the Phillies where he went 7 2/3, gave 2 runs, got a no decision. They lost 3-2. 6 innings, 2 runs, got a no decision. They won 6-5. I mean, you look and they're just littered all over the place. All these great outings that count for nothing. 1 run on 2 hits in 7 innings. In a game, they went on to win 11-3. So you couldn't score any runs when he was on the mound. I mean, you could be talking about he could have 23, 24 wins. Am I worried about the Yankees resting players after clinching? It's possible, but I think with the swoon that we saw the Yankees have through most of August, that Aaron Boone's not going to take the risk of trying to take some of these guys out of the lineup. I think they're just going to keep walking Judge anyway. I think you'll probably see that maybe over the weekend or into next week. You'll see some of these guys sit down for a game or 2. I think right now they want to stick it to Toronto because they keep walking Judge. But, yeah, it's definitely a possibility. Like I said, I was worried about the same thing with the Cardinals. The problem is Boone's been around a bit, whereas Marmol is a first-year manager. So it'll be interesting. But to your point, yeah, it is a concern, but I also look at Mitch White being not good. Now, I will say this: I do have a fond spot for Mitch White because he was the pitcher for the Dodgers back in May. I think it was May. Well, we hit a 10-teamer. He was the last pitcher to start a game on that 10-teamer that we had on the show, where he was pitching against the Diamondbacks, and they won 14-1. It's his only win. Did he actually get the? He didn't actually get the win in that game. It was May 26th. He went 4 innings. You have 2 hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. For some reason, Dave Roberts said, "Well, you threw 61 pitches. Get out." Even though the score at that point was 6-0. I just don't think White can match up with the Yankees. And now we can move on to 4 for the show. Some interesting ones up here. There's Milwaukee, since Bill was asking about it before. I thought I had it up here. When I do the slides, I just try and go through and punch in all the numbers, and I don't remember where they all are. Cleveland, like I said, they disappointed me yesterday. The Rays are going to send Tyler Glasnow to the mound. It's his first start in an eternity. As you know, Reichel's strategy, and I agree with it, is fading the guy that's coming off the IL who hasn't pitched in a long time. He hasn't pitched since last year. He made just 14 starts. Now, if you wanted to chase something with Glasnow, I would recommend chasing maybe the strikeout prop, because that Glasnow is capable of fanning guys, and he had a low number. I think it was 3.5 is plus 115 at Caesars right now. He could probably get to 5, maybe 6. So if you wanted to do something with that, you could. I just don't see the Rays doing a whole lot against Tristan McKenzie. McKenzie's been good of late. He had his issues. He's had his ups and downs. But you look, and he's coming off 8 innings against the White Sox, give up 2 runs. The Guardians have won his last 4 starts, which will all come in the month of September. He beat the Royals, or he got a no decision against the Royals. He beat the Twins, then he got a no decision against the Twins, and then he beat the White Sox. McKenzie's a good pitcher. He's got a bright future for sure. Good to see you, JC. Hope things are well with you as well. Buena suerte to you as well. Hopefully your bets hit. The Dodgers over the Padres. It's Urias and is it Musgrove tonight? Yeah. I had to work on the game for tomorrow where the Dodgers are going with an opener before going with Heaney against Manaea, so I had to double check. Urias has been on a roll, though, man. You look at his numbers, and it's hard to believe that this guy was below 500 in June before he started turning things on, because you just take a look here, and on June 12th, after he lost to the Giants, Urias was 3-6. And since that point, since his next start, which came on June 18th, to now, he's gone 14-1 with a 3.08 earned run average, 23 walks, 101 strikeouts in 99 2/3 innings. The Dodgers have won 16 of those 17 starts. And the one that he lost was August 22nd against the Brewers at Dodger Stadium, where he gave up a run on 2 hits, a walk, and 7 strikeouts in 6 innings in a game the Dodgers lost 4-0. So they didn't even score when he in his one loss in that stretch. Opponents hitting just a $179 with a 235 on base percentage, a 296 slugging percentage, and a 219 average on balls in play during that stretch. That's just ridiculous. Musgrove, started well. Had a stretch when he couldn't buy a win. What did he go, like 9 or 8 or 7 or 8 decisions where he couldn't get a win? You look, and he's now 10-7 after starting the year, 8-0. Lost. There got another decision in his last start, which was a loss to the Cardinals. Got shelled by the Dodgers on September 11th. Gave up 4 runs on 6 hits in 5 1/3 in a game they lost 11-2. I'll take Urias and the Dodgers, who are pissed off that Kimbrel walked away the game yesterday. I'm going to go with the Orioles over the Red Sox. I like Creamer better than I like Hill. Hill has been god-awful. And Baltimore needs the win. Because, let's face it, when you're 3.5 back with single-digit games to go, you need wins and you need help. And we talked about Milwaukee over St. Louis already. And you see if you bet the money lines on those, a little better than 10-1. If you want to go crazy and take the run lines on all 4 of those, almost 40-1. So, nice return on investment. As James said, hit the like freeloaders. I'm not going to call everybody freeloaders yet. Maybe later in the week, It's kind of like PBS, you have to try to cajole people first, and then you start calling them freeloaders and bums. That takes us to Shot in the Dark. Now, you'll see there, I put another line in there for potential on the alternative K props, which are the second ones after the slash, which we'll get to in a minute. Anthony Santander, the Orioles, over 1.5 total bases. Somebody explain to me how this is the case, because you look, Santander hits .230 against right-handed pitching, but Hill's a lefty. And 152 at-bats against left-handed pitching this year, Santander's hitting .303 with 7 doubles, 11 homers, and 27 RBIs. And if that wasn't enough for you, he's murdered the Red Sox this year. You look at his numbers against Boston on the season, 17 games, 72 plate appearances, 63 official at-bats. He's scored 15 runs. He's got 20 hits, so he's hitting .318. He's got 3 doubles. 7 of his 20 hits are home runs. He's driven in 23 runs against the Red Sox. Think about that. 23 runs in 17 games. He's driven in 65 against the rest of the league. How this is plus money, I don't get it. But you know what? I'll take it, because how can you not? Gleyber Torres, been on a roll of late. I know we talked the other day about how Reichel thinks he's one of the stupidest players in Major League Baseball because he has no situational awareness. He'd be like one of those guys on Madden whose situational awareness is like 3. Torres had 3 hits last night. He's got 14 hits in his last 10 games. He's got 26 total bases in that stretch. When Torres is hot, there's very few guys that can keep up with him. When Torres is cold, you don't want to have him in the batter's box at all. But he's on a roll right now. I think he should take care of business against Mitch White. If you want to put Rizzo in there, you could. I didn't put Judge in there because he's minus money for total bases. Like he's actually going to get a pitch to hit. Trey Turner over 1.5 total bases. He had 3 hits last night for the Dodgers. Guy continues to be a force near the top of the lineup, hitting behind Mookie Betts and in front of Freeman. If there's a better 1, 2, 3 in the batting order in the majors, I'd like to know who it is, because Turner, 20 homers, 97 runs scored, 97 runs batted in, 25 steals. He's hitting .302. He's got 187 hits. He's got 39 doubles. That's just an embarrassment of riches at the top of anybody's lineup. Mike Trout, over 1.5 total bases. Let's face it. He's facing Adrian Martinez, who we said has been awful. Just to give you a quick look at Martinez in his career, which isn't very long because, he was called up from the minors earlier this year to make his debut. 4-5, an ERA of 6.10, a 1.521 WHIP. He's given up 12 home runs in 48 2/3. So that's 2.2 home runs per 9 innings. You got to think that Trout and Ohtani, even Taylor Ward, licking their chops to get a hack against him. Okay, back to talking about Mitch White. Okay, let me take a look here. Just bear with me because I got to pull this up. All right, Mitch White. All right, where is he? Well, I don't know if you want to say that he's pitched well against them. He made one start. He gave a run in 4 innings and no walks, 5 strikeouts. But he gave up 7 hits. So 7 hits in 4 innings isn't necessarily all that great. He managed to avoid trouble. I'll give him that. They went on to win that game 5-2. Let me just see what the Yankees did in situational hitting in that game. Let's see. First innings. Okay, so they had runners on first and second. Then he got a pop out and a ground out in the first. Second inning, he gave up a double. Then there was an E6, then a base hit. So they had runners on first and second with 1 out again. And he fanned LeMahieu and got Benintendi to bounce out. In the third, he gave up a infield single, then got out of it with 2 strikeouts and a ground out. Then in the fourth, 1 out single, then a 2 out single, put runners on the corners, and he got Benintendi to bounce out again. So he got out of trouble with the help of Andrew Benintendi bouncing out twice, and of course we know Benintendi's not playing at the moment. I mean, he could. I don't see it. The problem is I don't see him going deep, and that could be a problem because we've seen the Toronto bullpen have their issues of late, where they didn't look great on Monday night, and they had to use them probably a little more than they wanted to yesterday. Good to see the Pirates. They were up 3-0 going to the 9th against Cincinnati, and promptly coughed up that lead. It's now even as they head to the bottom of the 9th. Kyle Farmer, a 2-run homer, his 14th of the year, followed by a solo shot from Jake Fraley, who's Reichel's favorite player on the Reds, at least that's still playing. So they wasted probably Bryce Wilson's best ever start. He went 8 scoreless, 3 hits, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, only threw 90 pitches. But hey, it's the Pirates, so don't let him try to finish the game. Get him out of there and bring in Chase DeJong. We talked about the Nationals. That's just a reach because I don't like Odorizzi. And now we get to the K props. Like I said, McKenzie over 6.5 is at plus 120. If you look at the alternative line, if you look for him to get 8 strikeouts instead of 7, the odds are doubled. I mean, how can you go wrong with that? You look at McKenzie, his last 2 starts, he struck out 13 against the White Sox. He struck out 8 against the Twins. Tampa Bay hasn't been all that overwhelming when you look at their hitting of late. Even last night against a parade of relievers, you look and they fanned 13 times in that game. Bieber had 5 and 4, that's Kluber. Bieber had 6 in 6 innings. De Los Santos had an immaculate inning where he fanned the side. Then Clase had 1, Karinchak had 1, and Stefan had 2. McKenzie's a guy that can rack up strikeouts in a hurry. So I'm not overly worried. He could probably get up over the 8. Garrett Cole over 8 is plus 120 or at least 9 is plus 220. Like we said, Cole has struck out 40 and 23 1/3 in his 4 starts in the month of September. Just taking a look here. Last couple starts, he struck out 8 against the Red Sox, 8 against the Brewers, 10 against the Red Sox again. He had 11 against Oakland on August 26th. So he's been very effective when it comes to punching guys out of late. You look back in early August, he had 8 strikeouts in back-to-back starts against the Mariners. So there is that. Then we've got Zach Gallen. I'm surprised that the number is that high for 7 strikeouts for Gallen. I get it; it's Houston, but I don't know if you'll see Alvarez after he pulled himself out yesterday. Gallen coming off 13 strikeouts in his last start, which was against the Dodgers. In a game, of course, he threw 8 innings, gave up 1 run, and they ended up losing 3-2 in the ninth. He also struck out 11 against Colorado in Colorado on September 11th. 7 strikeouts against the Brewers on September 4th, 7 against the Phillies on August 30th. He had 12 against the Giants. So some good numbers there for him. If you want to go over 7.5, as you see, it's plus 300. Same token, we talked about Verlander facing a Arizona team that has a bunch of guys that whiff at least 20% of the time against right-handed pitching in their lineup. I know Verlander had his struggles in his last start against the Orioles, where he only struck out 4, but you look before that, he struck out 9 against Oakland, 6 against Baltimore, 10 against the Twins. And you have to think that the gloves are off as far as the pitch count goes for Verlander in this one. Arizona's pop gun offense probably won't do a whole lot in that contest. If you want to go an alternative route there for outs recorded, if he get at 6 1/3 innings, it's a plus 140. So that's an alternative option you look at. I like the Nationals in this one, Nathan, because I don't like Jake Odorizzi. Don't like him at all. I faded him repeatedly. I faded him when he was in Houston. Now, Washington could get to Josiah Gray and put some runs on the board, but I don't trust Odorizzi to keep Washington from putting runs up against him. And that's the big issue is, like we were talking about before, Odorizzi has struggled since coming to Atlanta. His ERA is almost 6 in 8 starts. And he's given up 8 home runs in 37 2/3 innings since coming to Atlanta. His whip is 1.646 after it was 1.15 in his 12 starts with the Astros. Odorizzi, he's just the quintessential back of the rotation scrub that you stick in there because you don't have anybody else. But you look and he's gone 6 innings once since coming to Atlanta. That was against Pittsburgh. And he got shelled by Philadelphia in his last start. 8 runs on 10 hits, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts in 4 innings. We just talked about Verlander, and then Kirby is the last one here, 5.5 strikeouts, plus 102 if you want to go where he gets to 7 strikeouts, plus 215. You look at Kirby's numbers here of late. Like I said, he struggled against Oakland in his last start and only struck out 1. He had 8 against the Angels. He had 6 against the Braves. He had 5 against Detroit, 9 against Washington, 7 against the Angels, 5 against Texas, 8 against the Angels, and he had 7 against Houston in his last start against them back at the end of July. We're talking about a Texas team that has a lot of guys that are prone to the strikeout. You look at their lineup, and you've got guys like let me take a look at their stats here. You know, Semion's fanned 109 times. Seager's fanned 99. Garcia's fanned 172. Lowe 138. Calhoun 130. Tavares has struck out 81 times and 295 at bats. There's a lot of strikeout potential in that lineup. Even Bubba Thompson, who Rachel and I have talked about, we like as a stolen base guy for next season. He's stolen 18 bags in 46 games, but he struck out 1 of every 3 at bats. So Kirby should be able to strike out a fair number of guys there. Dodgers and Padres over or under. I'm going to lean towards the under. I just think Urias keeps the Padres in check. And the way things go in Petco Park, the Padres are 25th in the majors in runs per game at home at 381. They're pretty good at keeping runs or run prevention at home too. I just don't see a lot of runs there. Yeah, at 7.5, I could see it probably ending up 4-2, maybe 5-2. But I don't see it getting a whole lot past that when you look at the way these guys have pitched. So if you were to play the money line on all those, return of $384,642.82 on $100. If you bet the Nationals run line there, as you see, quite the increase, over $600,000. And if you just play the K props, just the last 5 there, if you took the alternative Ks, which is McKenzie over 7.5, Goal over 8.5, Gallen over 7.5, Verlander over 8.5, and Kirby over 6.5, almost $52,000 on $100 for those 5. Of course, you can mix and match them. You can mix and match, if you want to take McKenzie over and then, mix in a couple of the guys with the lower number, you can always do that. If you want to just, round robin them, do that too. Whatever works, it's all good. And with that will bring us to the close of the show for Wednesday. We will be back tomorrow. We'll talk about the Thursday night game with the Dolphins and the Bengals. We'll talk about the Utah State BYU game. We'll talk about, let's see, what exciting games do we have for baseball tomorrow? Because it's Thursday, so by the time we come on, 3 of the games that are scheduled for tomorrow will have already started. A 4th one will start while we're on the air. So we'll talk about the other 6 games that will go off Thursday evening. And of course, like the title of the show says, we'll talk about just parlays. Hopefully you guys had a good time. We'll see you again tomorrow. Oh, buddy, under 4.5 Ks for Creamer. Let me take a quick look real quick. I mean, like I said, he struggled against Boston in his career. He struck out 6 against Houston in his last start. But you look at his 3 starts before that, 3-1 and 3. Then he had 6 against Oakland. But then he had 3 and 4. In his 2 starts against Boston of late, he had 4 strikeouts and 6. I think under 4.5 is probably safe. He might top out at 4 with the way we've seen the starting pitching go in the first 2 games of the series, where the longest start by anybody is Waka's 3 1/3 on Monday night. You might not have a starter last long enough. So I would probably lean towards the under there as well. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Gio, about wait for the lineups kind of day. Unfortunately, when we get to this late in the season, that's what you kind of have to do, because so many teams are playing out the string towards headed to the golf course. Other teams, you don't know if they're going to rest guys or not. So I see where you're coming from. But like I said, they'll do it for Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel, for the Winners and Winers Network and everybody else. I'm Chris King. We'll see you tomorrow on Just Parlays.